year is 1206. Across the endless grasslands of Mongolia, cold winds sweep over the steppe. A rider stands beside his horse, the horizon stretching in every direction. He is not a king, not yet, but soon the world will know his name, Genghis Khan. His armies would conquer lands larger than the Roman Empire, larger than Alexander's. They would destroy cities, crush empires, and connect continents. And yet, their greatest weapon wasn't forged in a blacksmith's fire. It had 4 legs, a wild spirit, and an unbreakable bond with its rider. The Mongol horse, small, sturdy, and almost invisible in history's shadow, was the true engine of conquest. Without it, the Mongol Empire would never have existed. To understand why, we have to look at where these horses came from. The Mongolian steppe was a land of brutal extremes, frozen winters, burning summers, and endless winds that stripped away everything soft. No crops, no shelter, no easy life. Only the strong survived, and the horses that did were not just strong, they were unbreakable. Unlike the tall, muscular war horses of Europe or Persia, Mongol horses were small, barely shoulder-high to a man, but what they lacked in size they made up for in stamina, toughness, and independence. They could graze on frozen grass, dig through snow to find food, and travel for days without rest or water. These animals were born to endure hardship, the same way their riders were. For a Mongol warrior, his horse wasn't a tool, it was a partner in survival. Children learned to ride before they could walk. They raced, hunted, and even slept in the saddle. Every Mongol man and woman understood the rhythm of hoofbeats the way a sailor knows the ocean. The horse was life itself. When Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes, he didn't just build an army, he built a mobile nation on horseback. Each warrior owned several horses, switching between them to keep them strong. That meant an army could travel faster than anyone else in the world. While European armies moved maybe 20 miles a day, the Mongols could cover 80 or even 100 miles without stopping. They didn't need supply wagons because their horses could graze anywhere. They didn't need blacksmiths because their horses' hooves were naturally strong. And they didn't need cooks because Mongol riders drank horse milk. And when desperate, they'd make small cuts in a horse's neck and drink its blood mixed with milk. It sounds harsh, but it kept them alive in places where no other army could survive. The horse made the Mongols limitless. They could strike at any time, from any direction, then vanish back into the plains. Mongol warfare was based on speed, deception, and flexibility, all powered by their horses. Every Mongol was a master archer, trained to shoot accurately while galloping at full speed. They could hit targets from 200 or even 300 meters away. Their bows were made of horn, wood, and sinew, compact, powerful, and perfect for horseback use. Imagine thousands of riders moving as one, arrows flying like rain, horses galloping across the open field. Then without warning, they turn, scatter, or retreat, only to circle back moments later for another strike. Their horses gave them complete control over the battlefield. Enemies never knew where they'd come from, or when they'd strike again. To the Mongols, war wasn't a line, it was a dance. And the horse was the music. But it wasn't just tactics or speed. The horse changed the mindset of the Mongols. They were not tied to cities or walls. They saw borders as illusions. Distance meant nothing. The Mongol horse turned them into a people of the horizon, able to move from China to Persia, from Russia to the Middle East, without stopping. While other empires defended fixed territories, the Mongols carried their homes, food, and entire way of life with them. That's what terrified their enemies the most. They weren't fighting soldiers, they were fighting an entire moving civilization. In 1211, when the Mongols invaded the Jin dynasty of northern China, their enemies had huge armies and strong walls. But they couldn't match the Mongols' mobility. The horses could climb mountains, cross rivers, and move through deserts where others would die. And when supplies ran out, Mongols didn't stop. They adapted. Later, when they invaded Persia, the same story repeated. Persian knights and elephants were powerful but slow. The Mongols rode around them, attacked from behind, disappeared, and struck again. It was like fighting the wind. By the 1240s, Mongol horses had carried riders from Korea to Hungary, thousands of miles apart. No army in history had ever moved that fast, that far. The bond between rider and horse was sacred. When a horse died, it was treated with respect. When a horse saved its rider in battle, the rider would weep for it like a brother. This emotional connection created a unity that couldn't be trained. It had to be lived. A Mongol army was not just an army. It was a living organism of humans and horses moving as one. That's what made it unstoppable. The story of the Mongol horse does not fade with time. Instead, its spirit still rides through history. Even after the empire fell, its influence stretched across continents, shaping how nations fought wars, moved goods, and even thought about power itself. When European travelers like Marco Polo reached the East in the 13th century, they were astonished. They saw vast networks of riders, horse stations, and messengers moving across Asia with breathtaking speed. Letters, trade orders, and royal decrees traveled thousands of miles in just weeks. Europe had never seen anything like it. That efficiency, born from the Mongol horse, became the blueprint for later courier systems, from the Persian postal routes to the Pony Express in America. In a sense, every fast delivery network in modern history owes a silent debt to the Mongol horse. But the horse's legacy was not only in movement, it was also in the ideas it carried. Through Mongol routes came silk, spices, technology, and stories. Gunpowder, paper money, and printing moved westward. Mathematics, astronomy, and medicine traveled eastward. The Mongol Empire created the conditions for a connected world centuries before the modern age. It was the first version of globalization, and horses were the beating heart of it. Even diplomacy was transformed. The Mongols' ability to communicate over long distances meant they could coordinate campaigns on multiple fronts, something no empire had ever done. Their horses didn't just carry soldiers, they carried strategy. They made planning on a continental scale possible, and all this happened because of an animal that most outsiders underestimated. When historians look back, they often call Genghis Khan a genius of warfare. That's true, but his genius depended on understanding his environment. He realized that the steppe's greatest resource wasn't gold or iron, it was mobility. He took what others saw as weakness, the nomadic way of life, and turned it into unstoppable strength. His people didn't need castles because they had the steppe. They didn't need ships because their horses were faster than fleets. The Mongol horse allowed his armies to think differently. They could attack from multiple directions, fake retreats, vanish into the horizon, and reappear days later behind enemy lines. This psychological warfare, powered by speed, terrified entire kingdoms. In battle, the sound of thousands of galloping hooves was as frightening as any weapon. It meant the Mongols were coming, and once they came, there was no escape. The Mongol horse also reshaped the science of logistics. Every modern army studies supply lines, transport, and endurance. The Mongols mastered those principles long before the term logistics even existed. They moved with no permanent base, no stored food, and no supply wagons, yet they never starved or slowed down. How? Because each horse was a living supply unit, transporting its rider, feeding on local grass, and giving milk or blood when needed. It was a complete system, self-sustaining and efficient. This lesson still echoes in military strategy today. The lighter you move, the more powerful you become. That's the same concept modern special forces and mobile armies follow, just with vehicles instead of horses. In other words, the Mongol horse laid the foundation for mobility-based warfare, a concept that changed human history. Beyond the battlefield, the Mongol horse carried culture and language. Words for horse, rider, and steppe spread across Asia and Eastern Europe. Mongol riding equipment influenced the design of saddles, stirrups, and bridles used far beyond Mongolia. Even in distant lands like Hungary and Poland, local breeds began to resemble steppe horses after generations of mixing. The horse had become more than an animal. It was a symbol of connection between worlds. And while many empires fell into decay, the Mongol horse kept its reputation. Centuries later, travelers still wrote of its strength and endurance. Russian explorers admired its toughness in Siberia. Chinese poets compared its freedom to the open sky. And Mongolian herders, generation after generation, continued to live by its rhythm. Modern science also helps us understand just how remarkable these animals were. Genetic studies reveal that the Mongol steppe horses changed very little over time. They remain close to their ancient ancestors, a living link to the age of Genghis Khan. They are resistant to disease, capable of surviving extreme temperatures, and require minimal human care. It's as if evolution itself built them to serve alongside humans on the harshest land imaginable. That's why even today, the Mongol horse still plays a vital role in rural life. Many herders still depend on them for daily travel, hunting, and herding. They don't see their horses as pets, but as family. A child is often judged by how well they ride, not how well they speak. It's a culture where freedom is measured in how far your horse can take you. Yet perhaps the most powerful legacy of all is what the horse represents. For the Mongols, the horse was not just strength, it was equality. Every man from the poorest herder to the mightiest Khan relied on the same creature. In the saddle, they were all the same. That shared experience created unity in an empire made up of dozens of tribes and languages. It taught them discipline, humility, and dependence on one another. In that sense, the horse was not only a weapon, it was a teacher. It taught endurance, patience, and respect for nature. It reminded them that survival came not from domination, but from harmony with the land. Even today, Mongol children grow up hearing stories of the ancient riders, how their ancestors rode across frozen rivers and burning deserts. Those stories are not about conquest, but about courage. They remind them that the same wind that carried Genghis Khan's armies still blows across the steppe. And as long as horses run there, the spirit of the empire lives on. When the morning sun rises over Mongolia, its first light touches herds grazing freely in the grass. Their shadows stretch long and golden. The world may have changed, machines may have replaced hooves, but the steppe remains the same, vast, wild, and eternal. That image tells us something deep about history. Empires crumble, leaders die, monuments fade, but the simple bond between a rider and a horse endures. It is the most human of relationships, built on trust and movement. And that is why, when historians call the Mongol horse the deadliest weapon in history, they don't mean it out of fear, they mean it out of respect. Because in truth, it wasn't just a weapon. It was the living heartbeat of an empire, a symbol of what humanity can achieve when it learns to move with nature, not against it. The Mongols conquered with fire and bow, yes, but what carried them, the small, tireless, loyal horse, was something far greater. It was the power of endurance, the freedom of the open land, and the unbreakable connection between two living beings sharing the same destiny. And in that partnership, rider and horse, steppe and sky, the world changed forever.